Right. It is so wonderful to see you all here today. My name is Spencer. I'm a member of Portland DSA, and I'm with our chapter's Portland is for Everyone campaign. It's really amazing to see folks gather from all around the country here. And if you feel so comfortable, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat with your name and pronouns. Yeah, so like I said, I'm Spencer, and I think we can all kind of reflect on the political situation we're in. There is an onslaught of attacks on reproductive rights and trans rights taking place all around our country right now. There are bathroom bills being passed. There are right-wing anti-trans bills being pushed through state legislatures. There's representatives that are rallying these forces. And this is, put us in a really desperate political situation, and one that I think we need to, assess a lot and stand together in solidarity and fight back. And so what this forum is going to be about is organizers from around the country in DSA sharing experiences, lessons, and talking together about how we can build a better world and how we can respond to this threat. So DSA organizing, as you're about to hear, is going on all around the country. You can feel free to ask panelists questions with the Q&A function, and you'll learn a lot more about it through this forum. So what we're going to do right now is I will have our panelists introduce themselves just briefly with your name, your pronouns, your chapter, and just a little bit about yourself and your organizing. And then we'll jump right into questions. After that, we will have a period of audience questions. So definitely make sure to submit your questions in the Q&A section. Then we'll talk a little bit at the end just to wrap up, and we'll be good to go. Thank you so much again for being here, everyone. So for introductions, Megan, why don't you go first? Go ahead, Megan.
Cool. Yeah, so my name is Megan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with Cleveland DSA. I was a membership coordinator for our abortion campaign, which we'll be talking about today. I'm also a member of Marxist Unity Group Caucus, representing with my shirt. And like organizing wise, I have some experience with both labor and housing organizing, as well as like political organizing, which, we're all doing. So, yeah.
Awesome. Welcome, Megan. Next, why don't we have Maria? Go ahead, Maria.
Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Maria. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm a member of Miami DSA and also the YDSA at Florida International University. And I'm currently the co-chair of Miami DSA's Bodily Autonomy Working Group, which is leading our trans and reproductive rights campaign. In terms of prior experience, you'll probably be hearing a lot about it during the panel, but I've done some labor solidarity and organizing work, a lot of campus organizing, a little bit of electoral here and there, lots of stuff sprinkled over a short storied career. I don't know, we can talk about it. Also, I'm a member of Reform and Revolution Caucus. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Maria. How about, we have two panelists named Sarah, so I'm going to specify. How about Sarah C? Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. So my name is Sarah Callahan, she, her pronouns. I live in Kentucky, but I'm part of Metro Cincinnati's DSA. So we cover Northern Kentucky and then some part of Ohio, so Cincinnati area. I got my start organizing in the South, rural Alabama, for Bernie 2016. So yeah, we led abortion no on 2 in Kentucky last year, and then we got to win again in Ohio. So we got to fight both fights. So very excited to be here and talk to everyone. And I'm also on the steering committee of Socialist Majority Caucus.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome. Go ahead, other Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Milner. I'm a trans organizer in Portland, Oregon. I'm a member of Portland DSA. I am the Electoral Working Group co-chair, here. Before that, I was on the steering committee of the chapter, and I was the co-chair of YDSA Portland State. I was one of the authors of the national DSA resolution that started this campaign for trans and reproductive rights, and I am on the national steering committee for the Trans Reproductive Rights Bodily Autonomy campaign with Sarah Callahan.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so now that we are all introduced, I think we can go into the first question. We are actually slightly ahead of schedule. Wonderful. Okay, so first question. How has your chapter been engaged in the fight for abortion and or trans rights? And yeah, I think folks have about 5 minutes to answer this question approximately. And we will go in slightly different order. So Sarah M., you're going to take this one first. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. So as soon as members submitted resolution 21 passed at convention, that was the resolution I talked about that set a national priority for trans and reproductive rights, we started preparing for a local campaign in Portland. And in October, we passed a campaign called the Portland is for Everyone campaign, which set a target of regularly organizing public events to try and provide a socialist message to the movement for trans and reproductive rights. So we started with this really successful Halloween kickoff. It was called The Horrors of Capitalism, and it was a combination like drag show and comedy show and dance party and political event. And it felt like a rousing success to me. We got hundreds of people in, including over 100 people who weren't DSA members, which was really cool. We raised a decent amount of money. We sold a bunch of merch, and the whole chapter was excited and engaged with it. Then we sort of grew our campaign and helped develop new chapter leaders who had become interested from the initial campaign work into leaders on the campaign. So after the kickoff, we've held a couple other events. We held a Trans Day of Remembrance Vigil, and now we're putting on this forum. And our goal basically is to take the momentum we've gained and begin moving towards a focus on sort of legislative and policy demands, like concrete wins we can get for trans people. A lot of people kind of assume that in states like Oregon, there maybe aren't that big issues facing trans people or people who need abortions. But in fact, there are a lot of problems. There aren't like restrictions in the same way there are in red states, but there's economic barriers, there's a housing crisis, there's mistreatment at the workplace, and most importantly, there's this price placed on the care we need that makes it so if you can't afford it, you can't get it. So on top of all of that, we've got people moving from all across the country to Oregon to try to escape mistreatment in other states. And so as we look into policy changes we can finalize, one thing that's become really clear is the affordable housing crisis is intimately connected to the struggle for trans and reproductive rights. And we're hoping to fight for things like relocation assistance, financial support for people fleeing red states, and affordable housing to try to tie all of these things together in demands for things like public housing, and emphasize the connection of the capitalist economic system with transphobia and sexism, and try to put forward the position that if you want to fight those things, you should join DSA and join a mass campaign to not only oppose transphobia and sexism, but also to oppose capitalism.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I am currently repping our Queer Socialism Now t-shirt that we debuted at Pride and at Horrors of Capitalism. Very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. How about Megan? You are next. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for hosting this panel, by the way. This is like, I'm so excited to hear what other people are doing because I am not very plugged in with what's going on at other chapters. So just for like a little bit of background, and sorry, Sarah, if you were going to touch on any of like the specifics of like how Ohio works, but in Ohio, we have the ability to pass constitutional amendments through like a petition process and then a simple majority vote on election day. So there was a coalition formed like after the overturn of Roe v. Wade called Ohioans for Reproductive Freedom, and they were responsible for like writing some ballot language and filing with the state and those sorts of things. And the language of this ballot was to enshrine like the exact protections that we had for abortion and contraceptives under Roe v. Wade. So within the Cleveland chapter, like just so like folks know how we work, we operate with a priority campaign structure where like our general body decides on up to 2 campaigns, and we have like a predetermined length, like duration for those campaigns and like explicit goals that we then reflect on after the end of the campaign. So we actually just wrapped up that campaign. Our general body voted to initiate the campaign to support this ballot initiative. We voted on that back in June, and building on some like groundwork that was already done by some of our members in a working group and working through like the petition process itself. And the campaign was centered around 2 elections, one which was a special election in August, which was an attempt by the GOP to block abortion from getting to the November ballot. So we worked on that initially, and then on the like November election itself. And our tactics were specifically to canvass Cleveland area voters and phone bank voters, as well as like phone banking for comrades in our chapter to like both get them to turn out to canvases and to like get them to vote no in August and then yes in November. So like just to give like an overview of our numbers for the abortion like issue, there were over 700,000 signatures turned into the Secretary of State. Like this is like overall numbers, not like specific to our chapter or anything. And then issue 1 in August was defeated by 57% in November. The abortion amendment passed by 58 or 56.8%. In our chapter specifically, we knocked over 5,500 doors, made like with the use of a dialer, made roughly 24,000 calls, resulting in over 1,000 conversations, and we engaged about 110 people in our campaign work itself. And like special shout out to Florida comrades and MOG for making that a reality, because we really couldn't have done it without we couldn't have done the phone banking to that extent without external support. And I just want to specify that like part of the reason we were able to spin up a campaign as like quickly as we did and like with these big, I guess, results was because we had run a similarly structured campaign just leading up to this. So our members were able to like tap into the administrative and like coordination skills that we had been developing over the course of like a multi-year campaign related to housing. So I think that like also shaped how we approached the new campaign, because we had like a better understanding of what to expect regarding like turnout and like what is like a realistic quantitative goal for something like doors knocked or like calls made.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Super inspiring stuff. Very cool. Okay, Maria, you are up now, so take it away.
Awesome. So yeah, I think I need to give a little bit of background for Florida organizing on trans and abortion rights, though I'm sure that many of y'all will be a little bit familiar with the story. Basically, bodily autonomy as we know it is under attack right now in the state of Florida. We currently have one of, if not the, I'm sure there might be some other people that might fight me on this here, but I think one of, if not the most far-right state Republican parties in the country, led, of course, by our awful governor, Ron DeSantis. And they have a full uncontested supermajority control over our state government currently. Ron DeSantis is currently holding the governor's office on his second term. We have Republican supermajorities in both the House and Florida Senate, and we have a right-wing majority in the Florida Supreme Court. And using this majority, they've sort of wielded it, and Ron DeSantis particularly has wielded it for the purpose of attacking the rights of working class people in South Florida, or in the state of Florida generally, and in also bolstering his right-wing bona fides and trying to, win or try to improve his chances of winning the presidency, which doesn't seem to be going too well. Some of these attacks that you may have heard of include a 6-week ban on abortion. This is following an already passed 15-week ban. Currently, that ban is not in place yet as it is being fought in courts. A ban on gender-affirming care for minors, and also new restrictions on gender-affirming care for adults, which have made receiving care, a lot more, difficult for me, for example, with longer wait times and longer lines, even just to, go to appointments. And also a bathroom bill that banned, trans people from using the restroom in publicly owned buildings that aligns with their gender identity, as opposed to their birth sex. However, another part of this attack that is often not always talked about is the intersection that his attacks on LGBTQ rights and abortion rights, the intersections that has with his attacks on workers and his attacks on education. Last semester, the main focus of the YDSA at Florida International University was one bill that really helped to encapsulate all those different issues. And it was this thing called House Bill 999. Basically, various people called it different things, a right-wing takeover of the Florida State University system, MAGA University, etc. But the basic gist of it is that it would ban majors, minors, and classes that deal with, anything that's seen as relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, like, critical race theory, critical theory, things of that sort. It would defund DEI programs on campus. So, for instance, at FIU, we have a Pride Center that is currently at risk pending decisions of our Board of Trustees, thanks to this bill. And also, it included attacks on the rights of professors by implementing a thing called post-tenure review that basically makes it so that, professors that have tenure, well, technically they don't really anymore. You can have them have their tenure get reviewed at any point and have them get considered for termination or other discipline, which of course, happens to take place at a time when professors are under more scrutiny and more censorship, or even self-censorship. Part of this is to have a very part of the goal of this bill is to have a very tangible effect on the universities themselves, but another is a chilling effect, to have people censor themselves and withdraw more. We decided that this was an affront to our rights as students to a decent education, to the right of our professors as workers, and to the rights of LGBTQ students on campus to have classes that talk about their issues, their history, and their lives, and to have services on campus that actually cater to us. And so we went to work and forged what was known as the Free FIU Coalition, FIU being the university. We worked in solidarity with our YDSA chapter, with professors within the United Faculty of Florida, which is the faculty union at our school, and with graduate students who are not yet unionized, but have a group called Grad Wages and Rights, which is trying to unionize the grad workers at our school. And we set with the goal of trying to have a mass walkout at the end of the semester and to begin putting pressure on our Board of Trustees. So we worked with the faculty union. We received lists of all the people or all the professors that had classes on particular Thursdays at a given time. By the way, guys, you can let me know how much time I have. I didn't set my timer. We set it out to have it happen on a Thursday at noon, and the union provided us with a list of all the classes that met on Thursdays at noon. And so for about a month in advance, we went about systematically canvassing all of these professors' classrooms, using the opportunity to go up and talk to them, email them, speak. Oh, I'm at 5 minutes now. Damn it. Okay, let me speed this up real quick. We spoke to a bunch of the professors. We did class wraps, having the opportunity to speak to the classes themselves and promote the walkout. We put up flyers all over the school, like listing out the majors and minors that would get banned. And to make a long story short, we were able to have a 400-person walkout on our campus, which is the largest demonstration FIU has really had for a campus not really known for a very vibrant political culture. And we've been able to forge a very close tie with many comrades who joined YDSA and with professors and grad students that we worked with since that point. I'll have a chance to elaborate more later, but I'll leave it to the rest of the panelists.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Okay, go ahead, Sarah C. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I hope everyone is getting like really mad on this call because some of the things like we have to deal with are just bullshit. So in Ohio, I'm going to start with our first fight, which was actually in Kentucky. So basically we started canvassing with like no electoral team at all. We kind of have this issue in Cincinnati, which we're trying to overcome, where our electoral team sort of hibernates like half the year or even like 8 months out of the 12. So at that point, we really didn't have electoral team, specifically like based in Kentucky. There was a lot of different laws compared to Ohio. In Ohio, we're really lucky with our laws, which is like sad to say. But in Kentucky, we're basically trying to stop this amendment that would be put in the Constitution, which would ban abortions. So we knew that this was our only time to fight back. So in response, we started canvassing all throughout northern Kentucky. So about 4 different towns or quote unquote cities. It was new terrain for us. This is the first time our chapter has canvassed electorally in Kentucky. But we ran into some really great people, had some really funny stories about the people we ran into canvassing. Everyone was really receptive to hearing us, hearing the DSA message, and having us come out to talk to them. We also, with the help of Louisville, Kentucky DSA, we also ran phone banks throughout Kentucky. If you have never phone banked Kentucky, it is not easy. We got a lot of hangups, a lot of not nice words, but it was overall like really positive. We were able to phone bank a lot of people, and then our canvassing numbers were great. So we were really happy to see like the towns that DSA Cincinnati specifically targeted, they flipped when they hadn't flipped before in the past. So that was where we kind of left off. We had this huge victory, but because of Kentucky's laws, we couldn't exactly canvass as DSA. So we had to do a PAC. And so we were left with this space where a lot of burnout happened with a lot of our main organizers, as I'm sure everyone in DSA has experienced. So come time for August's special election in Ohio, our chapter was extremely burnt out. We did not have an electoral team at all. 2 people who were running it actually resigned. So I came back to the chapter after running some stuff nationally. I stepped in to be electoral chair. And with the help of a lot of great local organizers, we were able to sort of kickstart into our August special election. We only had about 4 weeks to basically put together a canvassing team and go out and canvass Ohio, Cincinnati, which was very daunting. But we worked really hard. We canvassed like twice a week on the weekends. We had a lot of canvassers come out who this was their first time canvassing before. So we led that fight through August when the election happened. And canvassing in the middle of the summer is not fun at all. It's my first time doing that. There was no spooky Halloween decorations to look at. It was absolutely terrible. It was really hot. We had to watch out for heat warnings with our canvassers, making sure everyone was staying safe. But it was a fight we won. I'm not going to touch too much on the logistics because Megan already did that. But come to terms with like, basically, we didn't know we were having the special election, and then the establishment tried to pass the special amendment, basically so that they knew that if we fought, we would win in November for abortion rights, and they were right, and we did. So once we were able to defeat the special amendment, we moved forward to canvassing. In Cincinnati, we had about 33 unique volunteers who were canvassing. Most were DSA members, or they became DSA members. We worked in a coalition with every other Ohio chapter that was currently not at OC at the time. So we had bi-weekly calls with Milo, our electoral team organizer, Caitlin, our staff member for our chapter regionally. And we met and we talked. We got to work with like Columbus. We did a really big canvas with them, which was really cool to see a different Ohio chapter and how they ran their canvassing teams. Cincinnati was able to have one of the highest numbers of doors in Ohio with really great canvassers who were able, what we did in Cincinnati, which is not what we did at first, but we were able to work on like a ladder system. So people were able to advance really quickly into like being field organizers, field leads, and that really helped us build out capacity. So as of right now, our electoral team is still going really strong. We're still having meetings and then looking forward to maybe doing a childcare a child care for all or a trans rights campaign come next November. Basically, the big takeaways from this and what we did in Ohio is just like, if we can do it in Cincinnati, anyone can do it. It's really fucking hard. It takes a lot of effort, but as long as you're building up volunteers, using like a ladder system, it worked out really well for us. We couldn't have done it without National DSA. We got a $16,000 grant from them between 2 campaigns that we ran. So $10,000 for the one in Kentucky and $6,000 for the one in Ohio. That was monumental to ordering lit and things like that. And we just designed our lit ourselves. I'm going to talk a little bit more later on about like the struggles Southern chapters experience. I mentor some of them. So yeah, and I can definitely talk more about capacity building and things like that later on. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Awesome. That was a super cool discussion. What I'm going to invite folks to do now is make sure if you have any questions for these panelists, submit them in the Q&A. We'll get to audience questions at the end of this panel. So let's get those Q&A numbers up, folks. I'm watching. Anyways, so yes, we are going to move on to the second question. So second question is, what do you consider the role of DSA chapters to be in the struggle for abortion and trans rights? How do you connect your local organizing to the fight for socialism? Great question. And we are going to, again, shuffle the order. So this time it is going to be Sarah C, Sarah M, Megan, and then Maria. So hopefully you're okay speaking twice in a row. Go ahead, Sarah C.
Yeah, why not? I love the sound of my own voice. Just kidding. Anyone who knows me knows I hate public speaking. But what do I think the roles of DSA chapters are in this fight? Well, we have to be there, right? Like DSA, we ran in Cincinnati. We actually ran a 3-issue campaign. So it wasn't just abortion for us. They were trying to sell off our railroad. So we fought for that. And then we also fought for affordable housing in Cincinnati. So all 3 at the same time, which people were really worried about how that would play out. But it ended up working really well. I actually I'll just grab our lit because I have one right here. We were able to sort of call it like the people over profit ballot, designed it ourselves. And then all 3 campaigns were just on the back. So it was a super simple design. But with that, we were able to sort of knock more doors and have a leeway into people who wouldn't really want to talk about abortion in the first place. So kind of targeting that. A lot of people, the railroad campaign here was bipartisan. Democrats were also against us, as well as some Republicans. But basically just using that as a leeway to then talk about, hey, this is a people issue, right? Like this is a socialist issue. And not being afraid to say that was such a big role. And what we found out was people really didn't give a damn if we were socialists or who we were. They were just proud that we were speaking for the working class people, which I think is something that we can take away from all of our campaigns that we've done so far. And so with that, I think DSA's role is just to be here, to be a presence, and to fight really hard to win. And that's what I'm going to say on that.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead, Sarah M.
Yeah. So I think that there are 2 related things socialists need to be trying to do. And maybe to give a little bit of inside DSA baseball, this was sort of the idea we had in mind when my caucus, Reform and Revolution, wrote this proposal for the national convention, is that we need to try to do 2 things at once when we organize around this. On the one hand, we need to be out there supporting the movement that exists like right now. So that needs to be showing up to protests, ballot initiatives, clinic defenses, mutual aid, because there are millions of ordinary people who are totally fed up with the right-wing attacks on bodily autonomy. Like the conservatives are trying to turn this into like a cultural wedge issue, but it's actually not very popular. Like people are especially annoyed at overturning Roe versus Wade, but they're also just generally, I think, annoyed and frustrated by these attacks on trans people and abortion rights. Even if they don't directly have something to lose in the fight, they recognize that this is kind of a culture war distraction from issues that actually matter. And so I think we need to dive into the struggle and meet all of the people who are getting fed up with these attacks. And I think our goal should be to have everyone who cares about abortion rights and trans rights to think, I want to join DSA because they're the ones fighting for the causes I care about. Like, we should set ourselves up as the people who are fighting most forcefully for trans rights and abortion rights. And that means, to use a bit of a buzzword, doing the work, right? Like, consistently, day after day, week after week, showing up to support these initiatives or run initiatives of our own. But at the same time, we also have to bring this sharp political edge, because it's not just showing up for the movement that exists right now, but also trying to show the unique perspective of socialists and why it matters. So as socialists, we've got this unique theory of change. We feel that trans rights and abortion rights need to be won not just through like policy reform, but through a mass movement that challenges capitalism itself. So we recognize that the question of bodily autonomy is all tied up with the question of capitalism and exploitation, right? You know, there are a lot of laws that tell me how I can live and what I can wear and what name I can go by and stuff. But there are a lot of laws that tell a lot of people those things. At the workplace, every day, a lot of people have at least some experience with that domination and exploitation. And what we need to do is link together the question of trans rights or reproductive rights in the broader fight for human liberation. And so I think that as we bring that message, we should be trying to say that there's a unique power to the working class. The working class has a unique ability to achieve change because the system depends on us. We're the ones who make things work, right? We work in the factories or in the grocery stores, or we build the buildings, or we work in the schools or whatever. And that gives us not only a serious experience with exploitation, but it also gives us leverage, because the system depends on us. And so we can change it through things like using our numbers and ballot initiatives and so on, but also through things like strikes and mass protests. And so I think we should be trying to convince people that this movement should not only be fighting for these immediate gains, but with a clear socialist message that change isn't going to be won, at least in the long term, by this or that Democrat. We've seen that, right? Under a Democratic president, we ended up losing the right to abortion. Rather, to build like lasting change, we need to build organizations like DSA and build up the power of the whole working class so that we can end the entire economic system that exploits us. So when we organize, that's the message we're trying to connect to people on. We're trying to say, we care about this fight right now. We want to join you in this struggle right now. We're going to prove ourselves in practice. And if you trust us, if you listen to us, if we win your trust through our actions, then if you care about abortion and trans rights, you should be a socialist and you should join DSA. And I think linking those two things together, connecting to this movement and demonstrating in our politics and practice is the best way we can fight for trans and reproductive rights in a way that shows the power of socialist ideas and socialist organizations.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Alrighty. Next we have Megan. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, Sarah really yeah, you absolutely nailed it regarding building DSA membership. So I might be echoing a little bit of those points. And it might go without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyways, that I'm not officially representing my chapter, and that I was selected to speak on this. So whatever opinions I'm sharing today are my opinions, and I will at a later point share a link to our retrospective document. But yeah, so DSA at a national level, especially when it comes to electoral work, definitely has flaws. There's some anti-democratic structures that exist, but it's nothing that we can't overcome with working on it. The last national convention gave me a lot of hope and our ability to transform any existing opaque elements of the organization into structures that are accountable to membership. So despite whatever flaws exist within DSA, it's still a democratically run, membership-based, explicitly socialist organization, the largest socialist organization in the United States, and that really makes it the prime space to do political organizing. So I think chapters that are doing any sort of reform work, like a ballot initiative or other things of that nature, should be careful not to just tail what the Democrats are doing or tail what these coalitions are doing, but to or to let the socialist vision become watered down. We really need to have our own messaging. And like advocacy and issue-based work, like service work is important and it can change people's lives, but absent of that like socialist framing and actual like political organizing, it just has a severely limited scope. And just like some examples from Ohio would be like the Secretary of State changing our ballot language, like after the petitions were turned in, they changed the language of this thing that 700,000 people had signed, which is not democratic. And the GOP in Ohio also like put out a letter like the day after the election, just saying that they're going to do everything in their power to prevent people from being able to access abortion. So like we need to avoid any sort of like free market framing, access framing. Like we don't want to increase access. We want free abortion on demand, no apologies. Like it needs to be available for anyone who needs to access it. And access is just not the same as really being able to get an abortion. So I think we should like inspire people to think systemically, focus on a fight for a new constitution, point out undemocratic structures in our current system. Things like the Supreme Court are like really easy to agitate people around, because ultimately our task as socialists is to change the balance of power, to politically empower the masses, and like through the collective struggle, we transform the state and also ourselves.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Okay, last up on this question is Maria. Go ahead, Maria.
Well, I've liked a lot of what I've heard so far. So yeah, we might be echoing each other a bit, but I will say I agree very strongly with the point that Megan brought up about not wanting to just tail or just follow politically in the steps of many of the whatever the dominant or most prominent organizations are wherever we live, because more often than not, these are usually liberal, less democratic, often like nonprofit model style organizations our status as DSA is a very unique one, and that many people, even people that are new to our organization, don't really have previous experiences with being in a mass membership funded and driven organization. And there's a lot of power that comes in that. I genuinely think that if we put our efforts and our minds to it, DSA chapters could be the strongest fighters for any given struggle, but particularly in the struggle for abortion rights and for trans rights. And I can revisit some examples from our Florida organizing. For instance, on campus, in Florida universities. Oftentimes, of course, there are certain limitations to campus-based organizing. There can be like ways that like the campus can kind of be like, I don't know, the baby organizing relative to what you do when you get out of it. But in the case of what we have in Florida, we have a situation where education really has become like this center for a lot of our struggles, and where a lot of the biggest fights are being waged. And when we were waging our fight over House Bill 999, we knew very well that with this majority state legislature, there was going to be a very high likelihood that this passes, regardless of what we would do, because that is, like we didn't yet have the power, the ability to like influence or to stop the far right in that case. For many of the liberal organizations, both on campus and in the broader like Miami area, their response to that was mostly just to go up to Tallahassee and lobby. It was primarily like organizing maybe some buses of people to go up and to try and like speak at hearings and speak directly to legislators, work that I consider, important and having a role. But there wasn't much of an emphasis on like organizing locally and trying to build up strength, at that local level, like among the students and workers at our university. We took a different approach. And I think it was our socialist analysis and our ability to recognize the importance of actually like organizing masses of people, trying to get the support, trying to work in coordination and solidarity with our faculty union, trying to gain a larger audience of students that really helped to drive our strategy, where the demand that we were putting on was for our board of trustees and for local authorities to not comply with these laws. We said, we the students don't want these. This is an attack on our rights. You are here to defend us and to be represent and to be responsive to us. Do not do not participate, do not cooperate with these attacks on our rights. Our slogan was no firings, no fear. And what that did is it sort of put us in a confrontation that made our administration, and to this day makes them, very uncomfortable, which is a confrontation between their students and their workers and the law and the states, and the threat of being removed or otherwise disciplined by the DeSantis administration. And we sort of used that pressure, or we sort of took that pressure as a way to kind of raise people's consciousness and propagandize around the fact that the people that run our school, the administration, which is also our faculty's like boss, is not on your side, and that we need to actually be organizing and fighting back against them. And that means organizing in your workplace, organizing with your fellow students. And we also tried to elevate that, or try to escalate that, by making it an issue in our student government elections. We raised the fact that our student government historically has not been particularly politicized or political in any way, and doesn't really represent or talk about student issues, but we felt that this was very important as a time for us to be fighting back. So we actually ran an open socialist candidate for student government, which sounds pretty easy in any other campus, but it's Miami, so people made a very big deal about it. And we got a lot of attacks. We got graffiti on our posters. I'm running out of time. We got graffiti on our posters. We had, a lot of pushback. Local right-wing Cuban American media, this guy named Alex Otaola did a feature on us on his YouTube show with thousands of people that watch him. Including our student senator getting name dropped and a little bit doxxed. But we won. We got him into office, and we've been using that office ever since as a way to kind of put further pressure on the administration, put more bills forward that condemning laws from the DeSantis administration, and also showing solidarity with various affected communities on our campus. So I'll leave it off there.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Wonderful question. All right. We have a few Q&As, but we need more. So ask questions about this stuff, because I'm sure like folks have a lot of different thoughts on what our panelists are talking about. And yeah, we will go over the Q&As shortly. So now's your chance. Yeah. Okay. So now we are going to move into our third question. Then we're going to do Q&As, and then we're going to do a little wrap up from each person, and that'll be that. So question number 3, let me find that in my document here. Yes, question number 3. What are the most significant lessons you would share to other chapters about your organizing work? That's the question number 3. And the first person for this question is going to be Maria. So you are going to go back to back again. Go ahead, Maria.
Neato. I'm going a little bit off the dome for this one, so apologies. I might go short for once. I would say that probably the biggest lessons that I received would be that, I think that DSA chapters need to be, regardless of their size, regardless of where they are, regardless of your organizing situation, fully immersed in the issues and the struggles that are most pertinent and most important to the working class people in your context, in your area, and doing so openly as DSA, openly as socialists, and with the goal of growing our organization and winning tangible gains for the working class. In our context here in Miami, I would seriously doubt there's anybody here that's unfamiliar with how bad things are, how bad it can be to be a socialist in Miami. But for anybody that's not, we have a significant Cuban American diaspora here, and diasporas from across Latin America who are very anti-communist. My family, my mom's family comes from Nicaragua. So, we know that, very well. And I already alluded to the fact that there is a very significant right-wing reaction, particularly from our political establishment, to any mention of the word socialism. Similarly, you know, we also have in our area, both our YDSA chapter and our Miami chapter, you know, we aren't the like hugest chapters, or we, at least when my YDSA started, we weren't like, you know, the largest chapters in the country. You know, we, like many other chapters, have a large paper membership. And then for Miami DSA, like an active membership of around 30 people. For our YDSA, with high turnover rates, I'd say like we got it up to 40 people, but we were starting off a lot smaller. It can be intimidating in that type of context, and it can encourage you to kind of want to play a smaller role, be more deferential, potentially hide your socialist politics a little bit more to avoid conflict, or because you think that's the most viable way to get across your politics in such a harsh setting, or such an area where you know you'll receive such backlash. But what I'd say is that what we've been able to do in our chapter, particularly in our YDSA, by trying to put ourselves at the forefront of the struggles for you know, queer liberation, for abortion rights, for the right to education, for workers' rights on campus, is we've, one, significantly grown our organization, both in terms of our actual membership, having started from like, I believe, roughly like 3 paper members about like a year and a half to 2 years ago, to now having around 50. You know, to the fact that our reach on campus has expanded quite a bit, where it seems that there's not a week that goes by that we're not in the student paper for having some protest or yelling at the president, or, you know, some other local rabble rousing. And that like we have, I think, become a more powerful, more formidable organization, and just increase the number of people that would consider themselves or think about socialism on campus, which we consider a huge win. And, you know, that doesn't mean that there won't be significant backlash. Of course, you know, whether it be our organizing for Palestinian liberation that we've done on our campus, or our organizing against laws from the DeSantis administration, or in many cases our our support for LGBTQ rights and abortion rights, we have received, you know, harassment, significant attacks from right-wing forces, influencers, grifters, and what have you. But what we have also gained in that time is the confidence, particularly of our campus's queer and particularly our queer LGBTQ community. We started off from a chapter that had a dudes problem, which is a common thing, unfortunately, in a lot of DSA chapters, to being a chapter that is majority non-men, you know, women and non-binary people. And, you know, we have also like sort of become, we've kind of become like a chapter where like we're not a Pride student union on our campus, but we might as well be one. And we've kind of become a place that people will go to and that they recognize as, if I have a struggle, if I have a thing that, you know, I need to fight, YDSA is the place to go. And that is really the start that I would want any chapter to kind of aim for, to be recognized as the best fighters. I'm gonna end it off there. I said I'd go short, but then I ended up having a lot to say. Womp womp. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Sarah C., you are up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Spencer. Yeah, I think the most important lesson that we learned in Cincinnati is, you know, we kind of saw Maine DSA like kicked ass, and they did multiple ballot questions, and DSA, or Maine DSA, is the same size as Cincinnati. So what we learned from them, and what I hope everyone else learns, is that if we can do it as the DSA chapter, then any other chapter in the US can do it. You have tons of support nationally, across like state, other mentors, things like that. So that's definitely something we learned. My fiance put in a vicious goal of like how many doors she was going to knock, or how much doors we were going to knock. And I thought she was absolutely insane. She was too optimistic. I thought we were never going to reach that goal. We did, we crushed it. And so just making sure like your goals are, one, we want them to be realistic. That's the social work in me. We want them to be attainable. but like make sure that like you can reach for them and that it does take effort to reach them, because those are the goals that are most worth like getting. And then after that would just be unapologetically socialist. Breathe in a socialist slate of issues. Everyone was really happy to hear from us. They did not care that we were socialist on like the bad end of that. On the good end, I would go home from canvassing, check our DSA email, and we would have like 10 people being like, hey, I saw the people over profit slogan. What are you guys doing? How can I get involved? And so that was our major push for volunteers. People in Cincinnati, they really liked hearing about people over profit. Like it's this big thing. We have developers controlling our city in Cincinnati. And DSA is really the only org that is speaking out against that. And so going into that would be to watch out for NGOs and coalition work with NGOs. In our experience in Cincinnati, it's been a time sink to work with NGOs. And there's some good things that you can get out of it, but usually they're not membership run. It's just a full, usually like in Cincinnati, there were like maybe 4 or 5 paid staffers. And so they just wanted free DSA labor. And they didn't want us to be socialists. They didn't want us to be outwardly socialist. So if anyone's telling you not to be outwardly socialist or that you can't wear your DSA shirts, then definitely push back on that, because that's just not true. It's total bullshit. And then lastly, reach out to experienced people. So I mentor a lot of chapters in the South. Growth and Development also has a program where you can request a mentor. You can message me. And then if you're in the position where like you want a campaign, make sure that you're reaching out to other people and other chapters and teaching and growing and sharing that institutional knowledge, because as socialists, that tends to get lost a lot along the way. And we want to make sure that we're sharing that with everyone. So whether you're in that position to share or that you want people to share to you, just make sure that you're reaching out. And yeah, that's what I'll say.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. All right. We are making good time, folks. We are doing well so far. Other Sarah, go ahead. And then we have Megan to close us out.
Yeah, well, I agree a lot with what Maria and Sarah Callahan have just said, so I'll try to sort of fill in some of the other gaps. I think that in addition to having really clear, sharp politics and being bold and unapologetic about what you're advocating for, it's essential to be like organizationally disciplined and to be well structured with your campaign. So a few things that I mean by that. One, you're going to want wide chapter buy-in and ample time to plan events. If you're trying to just sort of spur of the moment, get things done with a small number of people, they're going to end up burnt out, and you're going to end up not having the most effective events. It's better sometimes to take a little bit longer to make sure something is efficiently run and well publicized than to try to force it too early. The other thing I'd say is you want to be very disciplined about things like mass outreach and contact. This is especially true for people organizing in blue states like Oregon. What we've found is people aren't just going to organically show up because they don't necessarily understand why the issue is so pressing. But if you do the hard work of putting up posters all over town and advertising on social media and building up a good contact list and having good, consistent advertising, if you can connect to people, you've got to kind of hold their hand and bring them in. Once you do that, they will show up. The other thing I'd say is you need to be working to build up leaders. And I think this is especially true when you're organizing in the queer community, although it's applicable pretty much everywhere. A lot of trans people haven't been given the chance to take a leading role in a political struggle before. A lot of us have other stuff going on in our lives. It's very expensive to transition. It's very distracting. It's very tiring. Often it's very frustrating. Even at the best times, it doesn't always leave a lot of time and room for political work. And I think if you're going to use another buzzword, empower people to be political leaders, you need to have a clear plan for what you're trying to achieve. You need to work with people to help them figure out how they can organize and run meetings themselves, how they can table, how they can go out and advocate for their politics. You need to be patient with people. You need to help them work through the difficulties of organizing. And that can seem hard because there's this instinct for the people who know what they're doing to just do everything themselves. But the goal of campaigns like this isn't just to get something successfully done right now in the short term. It's to build up a movement, it's to build up an organization, and it's to build up capacity for years to come. I think if this national DSA campaign is successful, 10 or 15 years down the line, when we're winning even bigger victories, I want to be able to look all around DSA and see people who say, I got my start organizing for the trans and reproductive rights campaign. And I think that we should have that focus in mind when we're trying to build things up. But I do think there are also a few things we can do to support one another. One is the national work that we're doing. I think it's important for national to assist chapters. By the way, if you're a chapter leader, check your email. There's an email that just went out about getting involved in the national work. By doing things, I think we can do things like producing materials and pamphlets and language and just having phone calls with people. But I also think your best allies in the world are other DSA chapters. That's a big part of why we wanted to put on this forum here today. Learning from other chapters, learning what has and hasn't worked is the single best thing that DSA chapters can do to strengthen their own work, I think. So I'd say, in addition to having a sharp, strong socialist message, having a well-organized, coherent campaign that does a lot of efficient, effective messaging outreach and building up a new layer of cadre leaders within your chapter will allow your gains and your work to be sustainable.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, and now to wrap us up, Megan, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, wow, Sarah does not miss. That was great. That was like taking a shot of espresso just now. I'm feeling like really energized now. Yeah, so sorry if this is a little long-winded. I have like lots of opinions about like the result of our campaign work. But I guess like what I think would be relevant to other chapters would be kind of looking at like tactics perspective and strategy perspective. From like a tactical standpoint, I think like we had kind of used the wrong tools. Like we had better tools at our disposal that we could have been using. Like for example, Action Network, there's a whole bunch of like functionality that I don't think our chapter has properly like tapped into using. We've just kind of gone on like what we're comfortable with, which tends to be Google Forms and things like that. I know a lot of chapters have dependency on Google, which is like not the ideal scenario. And I guess from like a broader strategy perspective, like personally, and I'm sure a lot of my comrades share this opinion, our chapter can like do a much better job connecting all our campaign work that we do with the struggle towards socialism explicitly. I don't think it's like necessarily the fault of campaign leadership for any particular campaign, but I think it's just like a chapter-wide struggle that we have because we've not like hashed out our chapter's overarching strategies and had like some critical discussions that need to be had, which we will be having in February. So I'm excited about that. Specifically with our campaign, I think there was an opportunity to inoculate more around the outcome that we were going to see at the end of the November election, limitations of ballot initiatives, the undemocratic nature, like I said before, about the constitutional amendment process itself. Like I was embarrassingly surprised when like the Secretary of State just like rewrote stuff because I just like didn't know that was a possibility. And I'm thinking, okay, like we need to inoculate more in our future electoral work about the limitations of what we're doing within the existing electoral system. And not to say that we should have like a full organizing conversation at a door canvassing or like during a phone bank, but at the like trainings. So at the phone bank trainings with those, 101 people that we engaged in our campaign work itself. Yeah, and like I said, we have a chapter convention for Cleveland coming up in February. So I think like a lot of these like struggles are going to be resolved there because we're going to be talking about our role in electoral politics, how we define an electoral win, a potential resolution to implement a local version of the national resolution, Act Like an Independent Party. I'm going to be talking about endorsement policies and our theory of change and like better communication strategies. So I think a lot of that will be sorted out at a chapter level, which feels like the appropriate place to sort out some of those like bigger questions about strategy. And I guess one thing I think we did well was we iterated on our printed materials. Initially, we had used this language that was kind of centered around like out-of-state billionaires shaping Ohio policy, which is not a relevant argument to be like people should be able to get abortions. Like those are not, that's not the most compelling message. So we ended up using the adapting the national kind of headline of our bodies, our lives, our rights, our democracy, but adjusted it to be our bodies, our choice, our constitution, which felt more concise and like revolutionary, especially with the Democrats' like constant use of like saving our democracy, to kind of differentiate, instead of our democracy, our constitution, because we'd like to see, you know, a new constitution, something that is not ancient. And yeah, like I mentioned, we had a retrospective meeting, so I can share that if people are interested in more specifics about like our critiques of our campaign.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all our panelists. That was really cool. So now we are going to move into the Q&A section. So this is the last opportunity to post your Q&As before we actually get to the Q&As. So send them in now, please. Some of these are directed at specific panelists. Others are more general. So panelists, if you want to respond to one, you could just kind of wave, put your hand up, put stack in the panelist chat, and we will be good to go. Yes. Sarah C, did I skip you for that last question, or did you get to go? I might have. Someone's telling me I skipped you.
No, I went, I think.
Oh, okay, great. It's okay. No worries. Good to make sure. Great. So Q&A. For the first Q&A section, we have two questions for you, Sarah, about the ladder system. Folks are curious about can you elaborate on the ladder system you use to bolster capacity? I'm not familiar with the term ladder system. Would you please explain it? So yeah, if you have thoughts on that, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so the ladder system is super easy. I kind of just named it that. I don't know if it's actually named that or if it has a name. But basically we rapidly needed to build capacity in our chapter. That was not optional if we were going to canvas. Like we started out with 3 people. So we rapidly like needed to build up our abortion rights and bodily autonomy campaign. So if people came to canvas twice, like we saw them twice, we would have a one-on-one conversation with them, sort of like right away, get them looped in. And then if like they felt like they could take on more, and we felt like they were ready to take on more, we would automatically like move them up to be like, we would train them on how to lead canvases. What this did was, because we canvass 6 out of 7 days a week, and those starting 3 weeks, it was just me and my partner, and another DSA member leading those canvases. I'm a crisis social worker, and we also have a daughter. So that was nearly impossible to maintain long-term. Also, it's just not good for the health of a chapter. So we built up really quickly. So if people came to like 2 canvases, we'd have a conversation, they would get promoted to like field lead. And then if they liked doing that and they continued, some people just stayed in that position and that was great. But a lot of times they wanted to even take on more. So then we did a lot of van training, a lot of like minivan, but specifically like van itself, like the backdoor van, which can be very complicated and convoluted. But teaching people how to cut turf was really empowering. And like, they really liked to see how we were figuring out like to go to these different neighborhoods, like what system we were actually using. And we found that when we rapidly were promoting these people into our ranks, which isn't easy, like no one wants, like it's hard to give up that kind of control when you know how important leading a campaign like this is, but just trusting your fellow like DSA comrades to learn and grow is like the most inspiring thing. And so then we found when they were doing these things and growing, they would tell their friends, their family. We had people's moms come out to canvas because they wanted to see like how they cut turf, right? Like it was like this really cool thing. And so just always keeping in mind that you're trying to get yourself out of a job. So I was trying to organize myself out of being electoral chair for the chapter. And so we managed to successfully do that. And it's really just so simple as doing list work and making sure that everyone who wants to has the next step up that they can grow into.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Capacity building is super important for these campaigns. And really every campaign. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's go to another question. So Dima asks, how do you anticipate the upcoming election year impacting this work? And I imagine a lot of folks have things to say about this. So wave at me, I'll gesture to someone to go first. If anyone wants to take this. Panelists. If not, that's okay. Sarah from Portland. Go ahead, Sarah from Portland.
Yeah, so I think it will be different everywhere, but in Portland, there are two sort of distinct opportunities. One is at the national level. This is unfortunately going to be like one of the primary issues in the presidential campaign. Don't you love being a primary issue in a presidential campaign? Whoever the Republican nominee is, probably Donald Trump, is going to try to use trans rights as a wedge issue. And Joe Biden is going to try to run on abortion rights. People are going to be talking and thinking about these things a lot. And I think that this makes it even more important that DSA comes in with our own message that says, as I said, simultaneously, like we are fighting for these things. In fact, in a lot of cases, we're fighting a lot harder than these nonprofits or the Democratic Party. But at the same time that acknowledges like this is a serious issue and it's understandable people feel this threat and crisis. And then locally in Portland, we have new city council elections coming up, and we changed our city council structure, and it's going to create a huge opportunity for left-wing candidates to get elected. And I think, again, this is one area alongside things like Palestine where we can draw a clear distinction. We can say that we're not just the candidates who are going to, provide lip service to these issues. As socialists, we will actually fight for public housing. We will actually fight for for expansion of healthcare. We will actually fight for poor people. We will actually fight for working class people. And we can draw these lines of distinction in a way that I think at a municipal level allows us to articulate our politics more clearly. And then I also think it helps us to build the capacity for our movement, right? Like if we can connect to people who are thinking about and radicalizing around this issue, like a lot of people are, and explain to them, this is why we're fighting for socialism, then we can build up a movement that can allow us to have a bigger impact on the elections.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah C. also has thoughts here. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I don't have the perfect answer to this question, but I will say come election time, what are we going to hear? We're going to hear back blue no matter what. You have to do this. You have to vote for the Democratic Party no matter what. And I don't have a clear solution to that, but people are going to be pissed off no matter what way this election goes, and rightfully so. And so I think we as DSA need to start bringing people into the fold. Like we sort of see a drop off whenever there's a blue president. People tend to get they were pissed off at Trump for what he had to say, and they joined DSA, and we saw sort of like a surge in membership. But when there's a blue president in office, people get a little passive and they think, okay, well, they're doing the best they can. And it's DSA's job to say, no, that's not the best that they can do. There's so much more that we can grasp in our hold. This is not what we can settle for as a working class. Like we deserve so much more. And so to give that voice has DSA, and to say, if you want more, we are actively fighting and we are actively winning our demands. So come to DSA. I think that is going to be the most important thing that we can do this election cycle.
Thank you, Sarah. Alrighty, we have another question. This one is from Venu. And Venu says, much of this discussion has centered itself around the electoral arena of political struggle, which is great. However, how this campaign orients towards labor has been a little bit less clear. How can Trebek orient itself more towards worker struggles at the workplace? How can we win support from union rank and file workers against business union interest, recommend contracts with trans and reproductive affirming care, protect trans workers and improve their ability to secure union jobs or organize a union drive, and uplift and the fight of all workers to secure higher wages, benefits, improved working conditions, and democratic ownership of their unions? Very good question, Vanu. And I see Megan on stack, so go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. So our campaign, like this is a definite miss of our campaign. We started off with these like, smart goals, these goals that are like achievable, realistic, and definable and measurable. And one of them was that we specifically wanted to work with existing unions, and we've done a lot of supportive work in the Cleveland area with Starbucks Workers United, for example. And we wanted to tap into that to get them to put out statements in support of the work that we were doing, and that was one of our major misses. And I honestly I hope it's something that like our chapter convention will be able to address, because we do have a tendency when we have two campaigns running simultaneously that the work is a little siloed, and I don't think we do a good job of like connecting these things where they should be connected. So we kind of like went in with the intention of like being able to do that, in addition to the intention of having this like explicitly socialist messaging, that I just don't think we had the like administrative chops to like, have those actually come to fruition. And so I think resolving some of those like structural issues at our chapter level is going to like help us do a little more of that in future campaign work.
Thank you, Megan. Other thoughts from panelists on this topic? If not, that is okay. We can move on to the next question. All right. I think we will move on. Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Vanu. All right. So let us go to this question from Margot. How would panelists try to dissuade anyone already under the tent of DSA from the idea that trans rights are minor or a distraction from other subjects of organizing? Thank you, Margot, for your question. Maria has her hand raised for this. Go ahead, Maria.
Shoot, actually, if anyone would like to raise their hand first, I have somebody knocking on my door real quick, so I'm gonna just take a quick second. Apologies for that.
That's okay, Maria. We will go to Sarah C. And then after that, Maria, you can come back. Go ahead, Sarah.
I always hate when someone knocks on my door unexpectedly. It gives me anxiety. I would say, so I'm a crisis care social worker. So I work with kids ages 3 to 21 at one of the only mental health urgent cares in the US. And what I would say to that is suicide rates for trans kids are rapidly increasing by the day. I cannot count how many kids on my caseload have attempted suicide or have completed suicide due to trans issues, either being bullied at school because they are trans, even if they have the most loving and accepted parents, which is not usually always the case. Even if they have the most loving parents in the world. I had this one kiddo who unfortunately completed suicide, but her dad got her name changed on her insurance, which was like, I don't know how you do that. That's nearly impossible. As like a social worker, from my standpoint, I never see that. It was just so empowering. And I worked with her for about 3 weeks. And it was the bullying at school. It was the teachers not being able to say her right name that ended up like having that final effect. And so these are issues, right? Like this is not something to joke about or games to be played. Like these are people's lives. These are our children, and they're dying. They are dying every day because of things like suicide, things like bullying. not being able to go to like the same bathroom. So I'm getting married to a trans woman, and seeing the anxiety in her eye based on like what bathroom we go to, or can we go down to Florida to see my parents because of their anti-trans bills? Will our kiddo be at risk from being taken away from us? Like, these are real issues that affect not only the working class people, but the people who are organizing in DSA. This is a really dangerous time to be a trans person. So just having that really, like, I don't know the right answer for this, but just like relaying that empathy of like, we have to do this because people's lives are dying. And if they're not worth saving, then I don't know why we would be socialists in the first place.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. Yeah. Maria, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that earlier. Yeah, I would say like, I mean, the easy and kind of flippant answer is to say like, well, I don't really think that my life is liberal elitism. But to give a serious answer, I mean, I think like in principle and in terms of like our practical organizing, socialists supporting, vigorously fighting for trans rights is, I mean, not just like the right thing to do, but politically the best thing to do, the best thing strategically to do, and really just like, in my view, a no-brainer for any person on the left. And I can get into it. I mean, first, just in principle, as socialists, we support, democratic control by working people of our lives, our economy, our government, and by extension, that should include our own bodies. As Sarah was talking about earlier, so much of our lives of any working person under capitalism is having like things dictated to you, whether it be the decisions that your government makes, what you wear when you have to wear a uniform to go to work, the hours that you work, the hours that you sleep, how much you have to pay for goods, what you can do and say. And attacks on our bodily autonomy are this like most intimate form of control on us, that, you know, uh, like beyond just like, the control of like being in a workplace, the control over like who you are as a person. I can say personally that like, living in Florida, a lot of the laws that have been passed have like intimately affected me. I mean, people know that there's been a ban on gender affirming care for minors. There's also been these restrictions for adults, for instance, banning registered nurses from being able to administer care, even though previously they administered the majority of gender affirming care, has meant that I have significantly longer wait times, significantly longer like, delays anytime I want to try and get an appointment or a follow-up at Planned Parenthood, just to, like be able to continue receiving HRT. The bathroom ban, which only applies in public buildings, that affects me as a person that lives on campus at a Florida State University. It means that literally, and like study, they don't have a gender neutral bathroom there. And I have to literally do the calculus in my mind of what am I going to wear today? How femme will it be? Do I want to risk just like holding it the entire time? Do I want to run downstairs and take like 15 minutes to get to the nearest gender neutral bathroom? Turning Point USA person being in there at the wrong time. Like these are like active things that I need to consider every time. And that is not just so much to say like, morally, you should care about what I'm thinking, but it's also like, think about the working class of South Florida. One of my first some of my first organizing experience within DSA was doing Starbucks solidarity work with local stores that were trying to unionize in Miami-Dade County. So much of the people that worked at these stores that have been leading this movement for unionization at Starbucks and leaders in Starbucks Workers United are queer and trans people. So much of our young workers in every industry are queer and trans people, and if they're not, then they know someone who is. And across the working class, we're seeing that these attacks on our rights, whether it be on abortion rights or on the rights of trans people, are at best for the rights, not motivating issues that help them win elections. And at worst, it is poison that the vast majority of working people actively oppose and are repulsed by. And I think that's there are so many people who I think are winnable to socialist politics, particularly within the LGBTQ community and those who know us and love us. There's so many of us on college campuses, in your community, your neighborhoods, in your workplaces and shop floors, that to ignore that or to call it, liberal elitism, as I believe the vast majority of people in DSA at least recognize that that's not the case. It's out of touch, and it would lock us out of one of the most struggling for one of the most pressing civil rights issues of our time. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Great, thank you, Maria. So Sarah M has her hand raised, and we'll go to her. And I think after that, we will have to move on. We are 4 minutes behind schedule at this point. Not that bad, but just I wish I could get some more of the questions. There are more, but yeah. Sarah M, go ahead.
Thank you for keeping us on schedule, Spencer. I wanted to answer this question because I do think it's important, and it relates not only to questions we get in DSA, but to questions people ask a lot, right? Like in a lot of the organizing we do in DSA, we're going to come across people who don't really understand why they should care about trans rights. Not every person we meet at a picket line or at a protest or in an election is going to get it. And I do think there's this instinct to say, well, it's this kind of boutique marginal issue, so we shouldn't risk the people we can win over by emphasizing it. But I think that's the wrong approach. And I think the dynamic over abortion rights shows why. It wasn't that long ago that people thought of abortion rights in a similar way to how they talk about trans rights now, as this boutique cultural issue that doesn't really matter. Now, defending abortion rights is probably the single most popular political stand you can take. The Democrats managed to win, or at least hold steady in the 2022 midterms, despite enormous inflation and rock bottom approval ratings for Joe Biden, primarily because of how mad people were about Republicans overturning abortion rights. The reason for that is that people understand that even if they don't personally need access to an abortion, it represents an attack on their basic liberty. And it's, in my mind, the same thing with trans rights. So I'm trans, and that means, as Sarah Callahan talked about, my health and safety depends on these little pills I have to buy, and on the clothes I wear, and on the way I make myself look. And I don't really understand why that is. I don't really understand how that happened, but I know what it felt like before I came out, and I know what it feels like now. My life is better in 1,000 different ways. But that makes me really vulnerable, because it means the things that make my life worth living are something that can be taken away from me. It's healthcare that I have to pay money for, and it's something that a law could be passed to ban, and it's something that depends on how much people care about people like me. And people can decide that they care about people like me, but they can also decide that they don't. But that experience is really acute as a trans person, but it's actually not unique at all. Pretty much everybody in this country is one bad day away from being in basically the same place I'm in. And maybe it's not going to be trans and reproductive care that you need. Maybe you won't need an abortion. Maybe you won't need access to HRT. But maybe you fall and break your leg, and suddenly you need access to healthcare. Or maybe you get diagnosed with cancer, or maybe it's something as simple as your car breaks down, you can't afford to fix it, and you can't keep your job without it, or you're getting evicted. Everybody has this little price tag that the capitalist system puts on the things that make their life worth living. And everybody runs the risk under this system of not being able to pay that price. And I think as socialists, what we should try to say to people is that we are all locked in this shared struggle. We are all vulnerable in the same way. We are all only going to be able to live decent lives if we're willing to take care of one another. And yeah, it's particularly acute for trans people. And honestly, it's maybe not something that everybody understands. But if you can listen to me when I say, I need this, trust me, it's important to my life. and it's being taken away from me by this economic system. If you can listen to me, then I can listen to you when you say, I need this at my workplace. I need this in my apartment complex. I need this at my school. The only way we're going to be able to build a movement that can actually win is if we are going to turn that individual vulnerability into a shared solidarity that can give us the collective power and the collective movement to build class consciousness, to say that so long as any one of us in this system have that price tag hanging over our heads that says you have to pay this much to keep living a good life, none of us are going to be properly free. And if we're going to end any one person's individual suffering permanently, we're going to have to end the entire capitalist system that is locking us into these conditions.
Thank you, Sarah. Really powerful stuff. So just again, thank you to all of our panelists for answering these questions and engaging with this profound struggle and these difficult questions that we're facing. So just briefly, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go around and panelists just maybe like a few closing words, and especially if you have what can folks do across the country, especially in blue states, to support the organizing that you, your chapter, your comrades are doing, right? And maybe just like a minute or two for each person. If you can, feel free to drop links, petitions, sign up, anything like that. And then I will say closing words, and that'll be our event for today. This has been really wonderful. So I'm just gonna, I don't have an order for this. So Maria, why don't you go ahead first? Or someone else can go ahead if you don't want to go ahead. I don't know.
Actually, this is a perfect opportunity. Yes. So, howdy again, everybody. I have an amazing opportunity for you all to support my red state organizing, and it is through opening your wallets. Well, let me explain why. So, among the various terrible things that are happening in the state of Florida, one of the laws that is less often talked about is this thing called the 24-hour rule. Basically, it's just a law that puts a 24-hour waiting period on a person getting an abortion. In order to get an abortion in the state of Florida, you need to schedule 2 in-person appointments with a provider, and they need to be 24 hours apart. Now, that has a few detrimental impacts. Number one, Florida has become a bit of a hub and a safe haven for people in the South who need abortion, because we're surrounded by states with fewer clinics and harsher bans. And so a lot of people come in from out of state to receive care here. And so particularly for like working class women and pregnant people who need to come down here, this lengthens their stay and makes it even more difficult than it already was to try and travel just to receive an abortion. Another part of it is that after an extended legal battle, this initially passed in 2015, but it only went into effect after a long legal battle in 2022. It has once it went into effect, the state agency that's tasked with enforcing it went right away into imposing fines on clinics without any warning, without any time for compliance. And because they are an arm of the DeSantis administration, they went for the hardest maximum fines they could possibly impose, with the goal of effectively bankrupting clinics. The biggest of these fines was a fine of $193,000 for a single clinic in Orlando. And that was $1,000 per patient that had been seen with a next day appointment. That looked like one of the worst attacks, and it was looking like it was going to bankrupt that clinic. But thanks to the efforts of a clinic defense group in Central Florida called Stand With Abortion Now, they organized a fundraiser to help save that clinic, and our local Orlando DSA chapter was instrumental to that struggle. And within 2 weeks, they raised $200,000 to save the clinic. Well, now the fight has come down to South Florida. Stand With Abortion Now is fundraising right now to try and save 3 South Florida abortion clinics, 1 in Broward County and 2 in Miami-Dade County. And they have until December 31st to try and raise roughly $90,000 to save all 3 clinics. As the co-chair of Miami DSA's bodily autonomy working group, we've taken on the task of trying to help out Stand With Abortion Now in defending these clinics by organizing a fundraiser for the clinics. We call it the Save Our Clinics fundraiser, and it is a variety show that we're hosting tomorrow, actually, with live music, food, and drag, where we will be trying to raise as much money as we possibly can to save 3 South Florida clinics. Now, unless y'all plan to make a multi-hour drive to South Florida like tonight, I'm afraid that many of y'all won't be able to make it. But what you can do is help support our clinics here in South Florida. I've sent the donation link into the chat for the Save Our Clinics fundraiser, and it would be hugely important and hugely helpful and appreciated for comrades from across the country, particularly in northern states, but from anywhere in the country, to be able to help us with this effort. We of course have our focus on a broader socialist vision for trans and reproductive rights, which includes, of course, like an end to capitalism, a fully nationalized healthcare system. But right now, it also means immediate defense for the clinics that we have. So yeah, if you want to help, please donate. Thank you so much. Yes, it is, but I did send the link into the chat.
Yes, thank you, Maria. All right. I put an order of people in the chat, but I forgot okay, Sarah M. Go ahead, Sarah M. You are next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming out today. I've really enjoyed getting the chance to talk to you all. There is one big thing you could do that would be most helpful to this campaign, and that's to join DSA. If you are in Portland, if you could join the Portland is for Everyone campaign, we'll get a link posted to that in the chat. That is the organizing we're doing locally. We're using that to put on forums like this. We'll be putting together more events. We're hoping to have a clothing swap coming up in February or so. But all across the nation right now, DSA chapters are preparing to organize for trans and reproductive rights. There are campaigns like this one going. And we are going to be building our movement, right? And hopefully come March, we're going to have a single big day of action that is going to unify DSA chapters all across the country in this work. So if you want to participate, join the socialist movement. The socialist movement are the people who are fighting for trans and reproductive rights. We recognize the stakes of the issue and we recognize what it will take to win. DSA is a mass democratic organization, right? It only works if people join and participate. So if you're hearing this and you're thinking, wow, those ideas are pretty cool. What can I do? It's up to you. The movement is the one we can build. And so join DSA. If you're in Portland, come to the next Portland DSA GM and join the Portland is for Everyone campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, Sarah C. Floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, echoing what the other Sarah said, if you're not a member of DSA, join DSA like right now. It takes like 2 minutes to sign up. Because we are winning across the US, which is great to say out loud. What I would say that you can help, especially those southern states. So with a chapter like I mentor in Pensacola, Florida, as I'm working through them with electoral stuff and electoral campaign, even things like ordering literature. I was like, okay, we're going to order union printed literature, kind of going through the process that we do in Cincinnati. Turns out there's not a union printer anywhere near them. So things like that, like logistical, even like the little stuff that like we don't think about, reach out to those like southern chapters and being like, hey, do you need help like accessing this? So like what we're doing in Cincinnati is we're printing out their lit for them and then we're going to mail it down from our union printer who we have a good relationship with. Things like that. And you don't need to be part of any national group to do these things, right? Like you can just reach out to chapters and see what support that they need. Anything like that. It really doesn't have to be like a whole lot, but just realizing that the logistics in the South are just different and they don't have the resources that some of us we live in like blue states, do. And even like living in Northern Kentucky, like we're very privileged here versus like people in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, who might not have like the same resources, Texas, things like that. So echoing what Sarah said, join DSA if you're not a member. I'm going to put my email and my Calendarly link in the chat. If you want to talk about what you can do, or if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And yes, Cincinnati chili, although I am not a fan of Cincinnati chili, please don't kill me for saying that. And shout out to our Amazon workers. I saw something in the chat about it. Our Amazon workers are working on unionizing right now at our base in right outside of Cincinnati. So I love to see them in the chat. Thanks everyone for being here on your Saturday.
Thank you, Sarah. And to wrap us up, Megan, go ahead, Megan.
First of all, that's blasphemy about Cincinnati chili, not being a Cincinnati chili fan. Unacceptable. Thank you for the Sarahs and Maria and Spencer and everyone who put this panel on. So the most effective strategy, like everyone else has alluded to, that we can use to create the better future that we want, is to build the democratically controlled mass political party. That's what a lot of people in DSA are saying this. So if that is of interest to you, and it should be, join the DSA. Check out your local chapters campaigns, but also like you can attend hybrid or remote to other chapters. I'm going to drop some links in the chat. We have book clubs in our chapter, and all the Cleveland events are hybrid, so you could feel free to join our events. We often have people that are not members. We often have people that are not local, so I will drop that in the chat. And right now, like, our chapter doesn't have our next campaign or 2 campaigns in place. We're doing a lot of like turnout and non-campaign support of Palestinian action locally, including doing benefit concerts, which, like the one last night, was amazing and raised over $3,000. So yeah, I didn't mention it earlier, but there's an anti-trans House bill in Ohio, House Bill 68. It just passed the Ohio Senate recently, despite having public comment, like turnout against the bill. There were like more than 300 speakers that spoke against it, and just like a small amount, like less than 100. I think it was even less than 50 that spoke in favor during public comment. So if you're so inclined, check out House Bill 68 in Ohio and follow along with that. And yeah, like I said, we haven't determined what we're currently focusing on for our priority campaigns, but that will be coming up very soon, I'm sure. We have some people that are presumably working on writing up proposals for our general meeting in January. So yeah, I'm dropping the links to that stuff, and yeah, thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Megan. All right, so the links are in the chat. Megan just posted a bunch of the Cleveland links. I'm going to share the whole list of links that everyone just mentioned, so they're all in one spot. Hopefully that pastes okay. Great. And yeah, so this brings us to the end of our panel today. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here. Sarah C., Sarah M., Megan, Maria, thank you all so much. I want to thank everyone else in the Portland DSA, Portland is for Everyone campaign, for all the resources that went in to making this panel happen. I want to especially thank Emma and Justin for moderating and taking care of the Zoom chat, all of the logistical stuff you did. I want to thank all of you for being here, for making this panel what it is, for submitting wonderful questions and engaging with these questions super thoroughly. And yeah, we have a world to win. A socialist future is possible, and we can make it happen together. If you haven't joined DSA, you should join DSA. And the recording will be published on the Portland DSA YouTube page. Do give us some time to get that up, just because of our own technical situations, but we will try to get it there as soon as we can. We will also send it to our campaign list. So you should sign up for the campaign, and you can get the recording in your email as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And yeah, solidarity. Thank you.
Solidarity. Have a great night.
Everyone.